So I just want to start off my Monday morning by having an amazing laugh at Canada's expense. Because as usual here at American Advocates, I was right about everything, especially when it comes to Canada's digital service tax. So I already put out a video about this ridiculous digital service tax that royally ascended up Canada's parliament and became a thing where they were just planning on taxing American companies that were worth billions of dollars and had made at least $20 million off Canadian citizens annually. You can check out that video somewhere up here. I'll briefly recover it right now though. This is officially from Canada.ca about the tax. The digital service tax applies at a rate of 3% on revenue earned. Long story short, this Canadian digital services tax was going to affect companies like Amazon and Apple. And yes, they're very wealthy companies. But the outrage over this comes from the fact that they implemented this digital services tax in the midst of American and Canadian trade talks. Not to mention the deadline. When this thing royally ascended last week, it was at the end of the week, somewhere on the 27th, I believe, or the 26th. And the very large payments that most of these companies were going to have to make in accordance to this digital services tax was going to have to be made by June 30th. Once again, referring to Canada.ca digital services tax, paying the tax. Foreign or domestic businesses must pay the digital services tax in respect of a calendar year by June 30th. So the sleazeball Canadian government up there decided that they were just going to 3% tax every company that happened to make $20 million in Canadian or more off of their Canadian citizens. And not only did they decide to do this, but they also decided that you had to pay it within 3 days of it coming out. Absolutely absurd. And President Donald Trump felt just as strongly about it, taking the Truth Social when he found out, saying this: "We have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact that they have charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs for years on dairy products, has just announced they're putting a digital services tax on American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country." President Donald Trump didn't stop there. That's a really long Truth Social, but he would go on to essentially say he was ending all trade talks with Canada and within 7 days was going to be implementing his Trump tariffs on the Canadian exports, 76% of which are imported to America alone. This would have been a giant blow to Canada, and President Donald Trump wasn't very clear on what the tariff percentage was going to be, but it seemed like he was upset enough to make it be a very painful one for the Canadian government and the Canadian economy. Now, in my video that I made covering this topic, I had a lot of very feisty, very angry, and somewhat cute Canadians commenting all over the place, telling me that Canada was going to be the #1 economy in the world, that they were taking America's place in the world, and that Trump was going to just have to sit by and take this from Canada, and that Carney was going to steamroll Trump. All kinds of absurd comments came in on that video. And we're going to cover that in a second. But what I really want to point out is, in that video, while Canadians were taking their time to celebrate over the 24 hours that it was out about how they were taxing American companies and showing America who's boss, Canada's #1 now, well, it was very short-lived. News broke last night, late last night, that Canada was rescinding the digital services tax on America altogether. And they were doing it because of the Trump tariff threats and because Trump left the trade negotiations table upon learning about it. That's right. Mr. Elbows Up Mark Carney winds up bending over for President Donald Trump once again. It's gotta suck to be a Canadian, but I also don't feel too bad because after 10 years of Justin Trudeau, Canadians had the nerve to elect a Trudeau 2.0 who's even worse. And speaking of that devil, Mark Carney, I decided to look on his X account to see if he wound up making any official statements on this digital services tax being implemented on America, if he had made any statements on President Donald Trump's Truth Social post threatening the tariffs and to leave trade negotiations from Canada, or if he had made any statements after the fact when Canada decided to rescind their digital services tax on America in fear of the Trump tariffs coming their way. And as you can see on his X account, he absolutely made no mention of it whatsoever, deciding to stay very quiet about it, probably because he hopes this will all blow over very quickly. But if they're going to call President Donald Trump Taco, Trump always chickens out, I guess what they need to do now is call Carney Caco, Carney always chickens out. Or maybe even CACO stands for Canada always chickens out. And that brings me back to my point of that video that I posted with all of those sorry Canadians, sorry Canadians commenting all over it, gloating and celebrating. What I want to do now is return the favor. Let's take a look at some of these hilarious Canadian comments that only took 48 hours to not age well at all. Just me-H1C. Trump made a huge mistake with threatening Canada and starting a trade war. Canada responded to that in a way Taco didn't like. By the way, the digital service tax has been introduced years ago with a starting date now. Of course Trump doesn't know that. Go Canada. Don't give in to bullies. To which I, of course, responded, fast forward 5 hours from the time of your comment, and it turns out Canada gave in quick. Roger Massicott. This must be a parody channel, isn't it? Not a parody, I reply, and Canada bent the knee to Trump and rescinded the obnoxious digital services tax. To which he responded, by the way, a strategic retreat. Taco Trump does that all the time. And to which I bring logic right back to him. If Taco does it all the time, why are you happy to see your leaders copying that? I mean, after all, Taco Trump, this is the guy they hate. Why would they be happy to see their leaders copying anything out of Taco's playbook? You got to make these guys think sometimes. They're very low IQ people. Here's one from Robert Lewis 3133. We Canadians are laughing our heads off at you dumb Trumpers, living, walking a-holes, and the world agrees with us 100%. To which I responded, and we Americans are having the last laugh as usual. Moments ago, it was announced Canada rescinded the digital services tax from America. As a Canadian, I hope you understand your place in this world, under America. Here's one from Blues Fan. Trump is a joke and the whole world sees it except MAGA clowns. WTF, are they just that FCKNG stupid? To which I get to, of course, respond now. By the way, Canada is the big joke here. They've already rescinded their digital services tax on America upon threat of Trump tariffs. Carney always chickens out. CACO. Here's a very self-aware one. Paula Petulo 359. Mark Carney is the new idiot King Trudeau on steroids. I love that comment. And it's very true. But we're happy as Americans to have him in, no offense, because this is how he is. Liberal politicians and liberal leaders are always willing to roll over, bend over, and put their elbows down, not up, for other countries' leaders. They're too concerned with what the world thinks about them and their country, and not concerned enough with what's actually going on from within their country. I actually have another video out there titled Why President Donald Trump Wanted Mark Carney to Win the Elections in Canada. And this is exactly why. Mark Carney will continue to roll over for President Donald Trump. But then again, of course, to be fair to him, any leader in his position would have to do this to some degree. They're too small to fight against their big brother, who not only keeps them safe, but supplies them with various things that they need, and also has the marketplace that is the most desirable one in the entire world. And so the moral of the story is, if you're a Canadian and it seems like your country's pulling one over on America, try to wait a good 48 to 72 hours before you gloat about it. Because unlike Prime Minister Mark Carney, President Donald Trump is a real leader who actually puts his country first. Thanks very much for watching. Subscribe to American Advocates for more.